Hi everyone, this is Celine from Blue Cala Patterns, and welcome to the final video for the Plumbago Organizer Pouch. We're going to be doing the lining and final assembly in this video. We're going to start by sewing our interior mesh pocket to one of the lining pieces of our bag. So you're going to need the mesh pocket that we made in the previous video. And you're going to need one of your lining pieces. So you're going to want to place the pocket. Trying to see what. Okay, so this is the top edge. So it should have the two lines of stitching, and this is the bottom edge. It should just have the one line of stitching. So use your cutting mat for to place the pocket. You want it with the bottom edge 1 inch up from the bottom corner. So once you have it placed, and make sure that it's 1 inch all the way across, you can just use some pins or clips to hold that in place. Okay, and then same thing at the top. The mesh can be a little bit, well, it moves a lot. So it would be nicer if you could get the top edge of the pocket to be at the same position on both sides. So it's just above the half-inch mark right here. So what we are going to do is we're going to sew the mesh pocket to the lining piece along the very bottom edge here of the pocket binding. And then we're also going to do a quick basting stitch up both sides of the pocket so that the pocket is attached to the lining on these three sides. So regular stitch length here along the bottom edge, and then basting stitch here and here. So now we're going to divide the pocket into three. Now, my pocket, the way that I separate the pockets in the pattern is really just a suggestion. You can go ahead and separate this pocket however you want. If you have very specific items in mind that you'd like to fit inside these pockets, then you can go ahead and separate this however you want. I'm just going to do whatever I have written in the pattern. So I am going to make a mark 4.5 inches from this edge on the top binding and sorry, I have a light here in the way, and along the top as well. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I'm just going to turn it this way since I have one of my lights here. This is what happens when you use a giant quilting ruler. I'm going to mark this one incorrectly. Oh, no, okay. All right, so now I'm going to start sewing from the bottom mark. I'm going to back stitch a couple of times across the pocket binding. I'm going to sew up to the other mark at the top. And again, I'm going to back stitch a couple of times across that pocket binding. Make sure that you're using a shorter stitch length so that you're catching the mesh inside that line of stitching. Okay, so now we have 3 separate mesh pockets. We're going to set this piece aside for now. Next, you're going to need one of your smaller 11-inch zippers. And you're going to need your zipper pocket lining pieces. So that's these two pieces here. So we're going to do a couple of things to these pieces. First, I'm going to find my smaller ruler. Here it is. So I'm going to use my smaller ruler, and I'm going to cut 1 inch from the top of one of these lining pieces. And get rid of that. And then we're going to press the bottom edges of the pockets, both of the lining pieces. I shouldn't call them pockets because they're not a pocket yet. So we're going to press the bottom edge towards the wrong side, about 3/8 of an inch. It doesn't really matter how much you fold them, as long as they're both folded the same amount. Okay, so just like this. Then I'm going to do the same thing for the second piece. Okay, so now we have two pieces. One is shorter than the other, and they both have the bottom edge folded to the wrong side. So now we're going to take this zipper and we're going to use the smaller piece, so the piece that is 1 inch shorter than the other. Move this one aside for now. And we're going to place that zipper over top along the top unfolded edge. And the zipper should be right side facing up, and the zipper opens to the right. Now this is just my personal preference for which way my zipper is installed, but you can change that around if you prefer to open your zipper. So this will result in a zipper that opens from left to right. So I'm just going to sew the zipper to the lining piece with 1/4 inch seam allowance, making sure to backstitch at the beginning and the end. Okay, so the zipper is sewn here to the lining piece, and what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to press it away. So the seam allowance is facing down towards the lining piece. If you look at it from the wrong side of the lining piece, this is what it looks like. I've gone ahead and pressed this open, so I'll fix that later. Okay, so take the second lining piece, place it right side facing up, place your zipper along that top edge, and we're repeating exactly the same steps. We're going to sew this along this top edge with 1/4 inch seam allowance, making sure to backstitch at the beginning and the end. Okay, so this is now sewn at the top, and we're going to do exactly the same thing. We're going to press the seam allowance and the lining piece away from the zipper. I'm really going to have to fix those bottom edges. Okay, now I'm going to fix my bottom edges. Okay, so here's what we have. If you're looking with the lining pieces wrong side facing up, the zipper is right side facing up, and the top and bottom edges are folded. So we're going to set this aside for now. Okay, so now we're going to take our zipper pocket facing piece, and on the wrong side, we're going to draw a rectangle, and the rectangle is going to be 9 inches wide. So I'm drawing it 1 inch up from the bottom edge. and it is 9 inches wide, and it is 3/8 of an inch high. Like this. And then you're going to take the remaining lining piece, the one that doesn't have the mesh pocket attached, so the remaining piece, and you're going to place the zipper facing so that it is wrong side facing up and your lining piece is right side facing up. And you're going to place this 2.5 inches down from the top edge of the lining piece, and just make sure that it's somewhat centered. You can mark centers and line it perfectly if you prefer. I just kind of estimate. So now I need some pins. Okay, so just pin that zipper pocket facing piece to the lining piece. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to sew along the rectangle that we drew, and you're going to keep your needle in the down position to help you rotate and make some nice sharp corners, and use a shorter stitch length. I use 2.5. Okay, so I've gone ahead and sewn around the rectangle that I just drew. So now we're just going to draw some cutting lines in the center here. So draw a horizontal line through the center, but don't go all the way to the very ends. And then draw 4 diagonal lines that go from that center line to each of the 4 corners, like so. And then we're going to cut along those lines. So again, you're going to need a really sharp pair of scissors, preferably with very pointy tips like these ones, and try to get as close as you can inside those corners without cutting the stitching. And that is really the key to making a nice opening for your zipper, is to clip as close as you can to the corners without cutting the stitching. Okay, so you want to get really close to those corners. So now we are going to pull that facing piece through the opening we just cut towards the wrong side, like this. And we're going to press the seams all the way around the rectangle box, and that's going to be the opening for our zipper pocket. So I find it helps if you dampen your fingers and kind of roll that seam in between your fingers, and do a small portion at a time and press like this. And then do the next section over. And then once you're done pressing from the right side, I turn it over and I press from the wrong side. Okay, so once the rectangle opening is ready, you're going to take the 2 zipper pocket pieces and with the attached zipper, and you're going to lift this up, place these on your work surface. So you want to see the wrong sides of the zipper pocket lining pieces. Your zipper is, of course, right side facing up, and you want the shorter piece at the bottom. Then you're going to place this over top, and then you're going to lift this up. And you want to have the edges of the zipper pocket facing piece to be lined up with the edges of the zipper pocket line. Did I say zipper pocket facing pieces lined up with the zipper pocket lining pieces? Whew, that was difficult. It is late in the day, you can tell. Okay, and then we're just going to, so I don't pin the whole way. I actually just put a pin at both ends because I like to move my zipper around so that it's perfectly centered inside this rectangle opening. But some people prefer to use Wonder tape, things like that, to basically just glue it in place. That way there, it definitely will not move while you're sewing. So it's personal preference. So now we're going to sew around the rectangle opening here all the way around with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, and that's going to sew, it's going to attach the zipper and lining pieces to this main lining piece. Now again, I'm going to sew with my needle in the down position at all times, and that's just going to help rotate at the corners. Now when you get to the zipper pull, make sure that you stop and move it out of the way. Okay, so now we're going to flip this over, and we are going to bring the top folded edge down to meet the bottom folded edge. Now I see that once again I've pressed my folded edges and ruined them. Okay, so you're bringing this down to meet this edge, and you're just going to use a pin or a clip like this. Do the same on the other side. And then you'll see it kind of makes a little bubble. I don't know why I put away my iron. I need it. Just going to press that up away from the zipper. Fix my bottom folded edges too. Okay, so now we're going to sew the sides through all the layers except for the main lining. So I like to sew this step with the lining facing up, and I just push this over, and then I start at the top, I back stitch, and then I sew all the way down to the bottom folded edges, and then I back stitch again. Okay, so when you've sewn the sides, this is what it looks like. The bottom edge is still open, and I'm just going to trim a little bit here and then here. The rest, it doesn't matter. You don't need to trim that. Okay, so that's what that looks like from the front, and you can open your zipper. The zipper's a little bit stiff the first time. There, now it's nice and smooth. And you can see it down. Okay, set that aside for now. Okay, so the next thing we're going to sew is our divided zipper compartment. And for that, you're going to need the zipper compartment pieces. You should have 2 exterior pieces and 2 lining pieces. And the lining pieces don't have fusible woven interfacing on the wrong side. So you're going to start with one of the lining pieces and your remaining 11-inch zipper tape. And it's basically going to be, it's going to start off similar to when we were attaching the zipper pocket lining pieces. So I'm just going to make sure that this is lined up. It's going to be a little bit wider at the top, and that's fine because that'll be trimmed further along. I'm just going to use a clip, and then we're going to, this time we're just going to baste the zipper to this lining piece. So they're both right side facing up. We're just going to do a quick basting stitch along the top here with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so the zipper is attached to this one lining piece. Now we're going to take one exterior piece. We're going to place this so that they are right sides together now. And make sure at the top edge here that the corners are aligned. And just clip those together. Add the corners first and then in between. And now we're going to sew through all the layers with 1/4 inch seam allowance along the top edge, and make sure to backstitch at the beginning and the end. Okay, so now these two pieces are attached to the zipper. We're going to press them both away from the zipper. Okay, and now we're going to top stitch this seam allowance all the way across with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance from the zipper. Okay, so these two pieces are attached to this side. Now we're going to repeat the same thing to attach the two remaining pieces. So you do the lining piece first, right side up, then the zipper, and you want to make sure that it's centered here. There's an equal amount of the lining on either side of this piece here, these two pieces. And just a quick basting stitch with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance along the top. Okay, and then we're going to take the remaining uh, divided zipper pocket piece, place it right side together with the zipper. And this time we're sewing with 1/4 inch seam allowance, making sure to backstitch at the beginning and the end. So that is sewn together. Now we're going to do the same thing and just press both the exterior and the lining away from the zipper, and then top stitch. Okay, so now open the pieces up, and what we're going to do now is we're just going to baste the exterior and the lining pieces together here along each of the corner cutouts. Okay, so it's just a quick basting stitch. You can do 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, and you're just doing the four corners for now. Okay, so you might see this stitching the best because it's darker, but this is what you should have at this step. You're just basting the lining and the exterior together. It's just going to make boxing the corners later on a lot easier. Okay, so now you're just going to fold this in half at the zipper. So the zipper is where you're folding. So the coil should be at the top like this. Okay, and then just hold these together with some clips for now. And then we're just going to quickly baste here along the angled sides all the way across the zipper as well, and then the bottom edge. So you're just doing a quick basting stitch. Okay, so take your lining piece with the mesh pockets, place it right side facing up on your work surface, then take your divided zipper pocket and place it over top. And for now, all I want you to do is to baste the divider zipper pocket to the lining piece along the bottom straight edge. Once you have your divided zipper pocket basted to the one lining piece along the bottom straight edge, take the remaining lining piece and place that over top. And again, you're lining up those the edges here of the boxed corners. And then you're going to sew these together only along the bottom straight edge. Now, if you like, you can go ahead and sort of try and press that seam allowance open a little bit. I did add a lot of basting, so it's not that easy. You can undo some of the basting stitches if you want it to be fully open. Okay, so now we're going to sew up the sides, and it's a little bit weird because, as you can see, the divided zipper pocket is narrower than the lining pieces. So this isn't really something that you can clip together and then sew. It's a bit awkward. So what I like to do is just line up all of the bottom corners, and then we'll go over to the machine and I'll show you how I sew these sides up. Okay, so I'm starting with this side here first, and I put one clip to hold those corner pieces together. So the edge here, all three of them, there's just a little bit of straight edge. So you're going to stop sewing once it starts angling for the side here of the divided zipper pocket. So make sure that you backstitch when you start. And we're just going to sew a tiny bit. Okay, and then you're going to bring this over so that the edge meets the edge of the lining piece, and then this one is over top. And make sure that you're catching the edge of that divided zipper pocket. Now I see that my pull is in the way, so I'm just going to move it over a little. We do not want to sew over a zipper pull. And then when we get to the top, we just make sure to backstitch. Now, I do like to sew more than once where the zipper is, just to make sure that area is extra strong. Okay, so the one side is sewn. I'm just going to show you what that looks like on the inside. Hopefully you can see that. Okay, and now we're going to do the same for the other side. Okay, so we're going to line up those corners together. Use a clip to hold them in place and just start sewing. Make sure to backstitch. And then once we get to the part where the divided zipper pocket starts to angle inwards, we stop, line up the edge of that divider zipper pocket with the edge of the lining, and then place the other edge of the lining over top. And then make sure that the top corners meet. Okay, and then I'm going to sew again the area where the zipper is. Okay, so that's what it should look like now. What we need to do now is box our corners. Okay, so we're going to box our corners now, and you want to reach in and you want that corner of the zipper divider pocket to be lined up with the corner of the lining piece. Like this, and then just use a clip to clip those together, and then do the same for the other corner on the other side. Corners together, and then clip. So depending on how precise you were with your sewing, they may not line up exactly. So what we're going to do to make sure that we catch all of this in the seam is we're going to use a larger seam allowance. It's better to do that anyways in a lining. Thank you, Iron. Because then we'll prevent having a baggy lining. Okay, so now we're going to sew along this edge with 1/2 inch seam allowance this time. Okay, and then once you've sewn the boxed corner, you can go ahead and trim the seam allowance there a little bit. And now we're going to do the same thing for the other corner. And then again, I'm going to trim that seam allowance. And then we're just going to also trim a little bit here. And then here. Okay. Okay, so the lining of our bag is going to look like this now. Make sure that you open this pocket all the way, and then you also want to make sure that your zipper pocket is open all the way. So open this nice and wide, then take the exterior of our bag. Now, you'll want to pay attention to the direction of the zipper. So I want my inside divider zipper pocket to open in the same direction as the main zipper of the bag. It's not super important, but it's just personal preference, I guess. So obviously this is a very small space and this is a very big bag. So you're really going to have to smush it to fit it inside that divided zipper pocket. Okay, and then you're going to line up this side seam with the side seam here of the zipper bands. And clip those together. And then I'm going to do the other side. Now make sure obviously this zipper will be open all the way. And make sure that the tail of your zipper is inside the bag. And to make sure also that here where your zipper angles out, that it's not twisted weirdly or anything. You don't want it to get sewn weirdly in this final seam. Okay, so again, I'm lining up those side seams, clipping those together. Okay, and now I'm going to clip the rest of the bag all the way around. Okay, so now that I have this all clipped together, we're going to sew along this top edge. We're not going to use 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. We're going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And then just when you get to the ends with the zipper, just make sure that your zipper isn't pinched, that it's going down nicely towards the bottom of the bag without any weird puckering. I'll check that as I get to that point when I'm sewing. Okay, so when sewing this part, definitely you'll want to make sure that your needle is in the down position and really go slowly. Don't rush because you're using a 1/4 inch seam allowance and you want to make sure that you're catching everything that you should be catching in this seam. So you want to make sure you're catching the lining and the zipper and that exterior. Okay, so I'm getting to the end of the zipper and you see it has like a little, it kind of folded a little bit. So I want to fix that. I'll have to take this pin off. There we go. And then do the same and check on this side. That one looks okay. Okay, so now that it's sewn around the top edge, we're going to reach in here. Now, don't forget your bag is actually inside the divided zipper pocket inside, so you're going to have to reach in to there and pull out the bottom of the bag first, and then pull the rest of the bag through. And do this. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to just check to make sure that our zipper looks nice. Okay, that looks okay. Yes, okay. Fairly happy with that. I have a little thread here I want to trim. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to sew the bottom of my zipper pocket shut. So here's where those folded edges come in handy. You just line up the folded edges and pin and clip them together. Pin or clip, you don't have to do both, pin or clip. Okay, and then we're going to sew the pocket shut. You can do it by hand if you wish. I don't sew well by hand, so I'm going to do it with my machine. I just sew as close as I can get to the folded edges, so very small seam allowance. Okay, so the bottom of the zipper pocket has been sewn shut, so I'm just going to tuck this in now. Okay, and close that zipper pocket. Then I'm going to try and fix the rest of the lining in there. Now, if you want, you can press the opening of the bag before top stitching. I don't have my ironing board, I just have the flat iron, and it's a bit of a pain to press the opening like this without being able to slip it on the rounded end of the rounded end of an ironing board. But I would recommend doing that before you top stitch. So now we're going to top stitch along the zipper. So press it first and then top stitch with a little bit less than 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, just along this top folded edge. You don't want to top stitch with too large of a seam allowance because we do need to leave room to insert our frame. So I'm going to do my best to press. Now, because I need to create a channel here for my frame, I'm going to do a second line of top stitching all the way around. And this time it's going to be just here on the bottom edge of the zipper band, a little less than 1/8 of an inch away from this seam that goes all the way around at the bottom of the zipper band. Now reach in and make sure that your lining inside is nice and smooth. Okay, so now we're almost done. Now we just have to add the frames and the zipper end to the zipper. So for the frame, we've created, by top stitching twice, we've created this channel that we're going to use to insert our frame. Now, I thought I had brought my glue, but apparently I forgot. So there is a glue called E6000. You're going to want to glue these rubber tips that are on your frames. You're going to want to glue those before you insert them into your bag. Now, you're also going to need a seam ripper. So I like to go and insert the frame at the end of the zipper. So just in this area here between the two lines of top stitching, you're just going to carefully undo some of the stitches there. And you have to undo enough so that the rubber tips here of your frame fits. Okay, so now this is open. And you're just going to open that up and insert one of the frames. Thank you, iron. Insert it all the way into the channel and feel to make sure that your rubber tip is located pretty much right at the seam on the other end. And I find it's really important that both of the frames are at the same location on either side of the bag. So I can feel that my rubber tip came off. I will fix that later. I have to go fishing for some rubber ends. Okay, so that one's in all the way. I'm going to do the same thing with the other one. Actually, I should just do that so I don't have to go fishing for more rubber ends. Okay, and then insert the second frame all the way. Again, you're just going to want to make sure that it's gone all the way to the end here, close to the other seam at the other end. Okay, and then I'm not going to show you my horrible hand sewing, but you need to close that seam that we opened to insert the frames. You kind of need to, now my rubber tip there is in the way, so I can't get my frame all the way, of course, on video. So anyways, the frames are inserted now, and if you try to close the zipper, so the first few times until the bag sort of gets used to this whole process, it's going to be a little bit more awkward to close your frame. And again, you want to make sure that, so there's a bend here, right? So it just works better if the bends are at the same location in that channel. Okay, and then so just open it and close it a few times, and then your bag will eventually kind of get used to it. And the last thing we're going to do is we're going to add our zipper end. And again, usually I glue this on, but I seem to have forgotten to bring my glue. I do think, though, that I remembered my little screwdriver. I did. This is my teeny turner. I love it. Okay, so you're going to take the zipper end, make sure that you don't lose the little screw that comes with it. And I just fold this to the wrong side. So this is the wrong side of the zipper facing up, and also the wrong side of the zipper end. So you should be seeing the screw hole facing up. So it should be facing you. And then, so normally I would add some glue in here, which I'm going to have to do later because I forgot my glue. And I just carefully kind of poke everything in there as far as it'll go. Just make sure you don't hurt yourself. Okay, and then you just add the screw. And I like that the teeny turner is magnetic. And then we'll just add the screw in. Now, I don't want to do it all the way because I have to take it off because I forgot the glue. So I'll just do it part of the way. And that's what that looks from the top side. And the bag is done. And you got your handy dandy handle. And you're ready to put stuff inside. It's easier when there's a little bit of stuff inside and it keeps it weighed down so that it's easier to open and close. And there's your divided zipper compartment inside. And your pockets all ready to fill with whatever you want.